It's difficult to draw favorites because I'm not actually much of a pro framework person. I think frameworks are often over relied upon, or too heavily relied upon. Not that they're bad, but I think they should be used for like rapidly prototyping the beginning of a project, and then towards the middle of a project you should be taking the frameworks out and having only your code there. So the idea of having like a React production app or an Angular production app to me feels a little strange. I feel like those things ought to be gone by that point that you call something production. But that said, I do have opinions on different pros and cons of some of the frameworks. I think many of them have taken this approach that if there's a problem that, say, a Facebook or a Google has, then most of our applications have that problem. So, for example, the idea of virtual DOMs. Virtual DOMs are a performance optimization around the idea that we're modifying our DOMs so much and in such complex ways that you can actually harm the performance, the runtime, like our clicks of our buttons are slow. And I know that there definitely are some UIs that are that way, that are so heavily interactive. I know famously like Netflix, they have a very complex UI, lots of animation and other stuff like that. And they were one of the first ones to go that React route. And so I think there are some that have that problem, but I think the vast majority of applications don't have the problems those frameworks are trying to solve. So as an example, I think virtual DOMs are far too much a pre-optimization, a premature optimization on things that most people don't actually struggle with. It doesn't make them bad per se, but it's often using a giant sledgehammer when a regular hammer would do. All that said, I think there are some things that more clearly fit with my perspective on what frameworks should do. And I would say one of those would be Vue.js, because they go the template approach as opposed to JavaScript in your HTML or HTML in your JavaScript. They have sort of a clean and nice, simple templating approach. That still is the preferred way of me kind of thinking about the world of front-end development. So while I don't use Vue.js myself, I like the idea that they sort of buck the trend of the virtual DOM and say, no, the templates are good enough. We can do some really good stuff with those. So I'll say about TypeScript, I don't actually use TypeScript myself. I have definitely looked into it, and I think there are some good strengths to TypeScript. And I've recently, a few months back, had a big debate with Dylan Sheeman of the Dojo 2 project, and we debated the idea of whether TypeScript was useful or not. And so, I do think that TypeScript brings some very interesting things to the play. To me, the least interesting of those is the name, the idea of having static type annotations that are enforced by a preprocessor. To me, that isn't really that important of a feature. So I don't really use those kind of capabilities of TypeScript. But I did concede in that discussion with Dylan that the idea of creating interfaces for certain types of data structures or whatever, that idea and being able to code to an interface, that sort of thing, there's benefit there. So I can see that would be, if I wanted to go that route, TypeScript would probably be what I'd pick up for that.